they had conversations with DEQ, the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality, and told them the machine wasn't going to be up and running in September of 2015. And DEQ, of course, let me know. And so I wrote a follow-up letter to DOE on February 28, 2015, and said, wait a minute. You told me this machine was going to be up and running, and now you're saying it won't be till sometime later? I mean, that's a critical factor in my decision making. So I'm telling you right now that you're not going to bring that stuff in until the machine is up and running. Now, at that point, they were saying, it's going to run, it's going to run. They were still saying it was going to run. Sometime later, they said, well, maybe the machine won't run. Well, then it would be irrational for me to require them to make a machine run that is not going to run. So that was my second proffer. And I said, okay, well, if the machine is going to run, you got to turn it on. If the machine is not going to run, then you got to tell me that the machine is not going to run, and you have to then chart a course forward about what you're going to do and the dates at which you're going to do that. And the response was, we are not going to agree to anything with dates. Well, tell me how you're going to resolve this if you're not willing to tell me when you're going to do it. They further went on to say, we are not even going to, at one point in the negotiations, saying we're not going to put anything in writing. How are you going to solve that if you're not willing to sit down and put anything in writing? They finally overcome that. But you talk about who is reasonable and who is not. Just consider the facts. All the letters are on my website. Go read them. Go read them. One small example. They said, we got to get this stuff done. We got this great emergency. We've got to get it done. So I wrote them a letter. It took them nearly 40 days to respond to me. I responded to them in 3. So who is it who's serious about getting this resolved, and who is it who is not serious about getting this resolved? And that's not just the first time that's happened, it's repeatedly. So to the response, who's the person standing in the way of the Department of Energy fulfilling this responsibility? It's the Department of Energy.
The Attorney General should allow the research quantities of spent fuel rods to come into Idaho, so the INL, the logical place to do the research, can do the research. We're talking about 100 pounds of research material here. We're not talking about bringing in large quantities of commercial waste into Idaho and storing it here indefinitely or anything else like that. And we need to make sure that the DOE continues to do their job to make sure that they're cleaning up the site, that the IWTU will ultimately be operating, but they need to make sure that when it's ready to operate, they don't start it until it's ready to operate. And so the idea of putting pressure on the DOE, this is the straw, the arrow in the quiver that's keeping the pressure on DOE, just isn't true. Because they are spending the resources we're giving them to get the IWT working. It's a technological issue is all. And it'll just take some time to work that out, and it'll get worked out.
Is it a trust issue too?
There is a trust issue. Some of the people, and I don't accuse Lawrence of this because I just don't know, but some people remember the 1980s, 1990s, when there was a real fight between the Department of Energy and then Governor Andrus and then Governor Batten. And it was at that time like DOE was trying to walk all over the state of Idaho. And I understood why they stood up to DOE and stuff, and they did the right thing. We're dealing with a different DOE now. You don't see that same attitude within the DOE that you had back in the 1990s when they were doing the governor's agreement stuff. I know I talked to Phil many times back when I was speaker and he was doing the governor's agreement. He was very frustrated with DOE and with the Navy, frankly. And but some people still have that mindset that that's who we're dealing with. Nobody wants the IWT to work and get it working sooner than Department of Energy does.
So we can trust the DOE.
I think we can, but we have to. But we have to make sure that we keep our eye on them, just like you do anybody else. You trust your kids, but you keep an eye on them. You know.